Hey heroes, cosplayers, and pop culture fans, are you ready to assemble for the ultimate geek weekend? The Hall of Heroes Comic-Con is invading Elkhart, Indiana with 2 explosive days of comics, stars, and non-stop fun. Join us Saturday, May 30th and Sunday, May 31st, 2026 at the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart. Doors open at 10 a.m. both days. VIP early entry at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday. We're rolling out a massive lineup of legends. Meet Eric Estrada from Chips and Fallout, Dirk Benedict from the A-Team and Battlestar Galactica, Tara Reid from American Pie and Sharknado, Catherine Cavadini, voice of Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls, Kel Mitchell from All That, Kevin and Kel and Mystery Men, horror icon Tony Moran, the original Michael Myers in Halloween, and more. Plus, top comic artists including Arthur Sidem, Marvel Zombies and Deadpool, John Kramer from Batman and Wonder Woman, Keith Pollard, a legendary Marvel artist on Spider-Man and Thor, and more. Scott Rosema, Stuart Sager, and others. Get autographs, photo ops, and chats with the stars and creators who shaped your favorites. The floor is packed with over 150 vendors, artists, and cosplayers offering exclusive comics, collectibles, original art, and merch. Enjoy cosplay contests for kids and adults with great prizes, live Q&A panels, artist showcases, interactive zones, and family-friendly fun all weekend. And the excitement goes live. Madness Entertainment Group is broadcasting straight from the con floor all weekend on YouTube, Build, and Rumble. Catch every moment as it happens, then relive it anytime with the full shows available later on Med TV on Roku. Grab your tickets today at hohcomiccon.org. Hall of Heroes Comic-Con, May 30th and 31st, 2026. Northern Indiana Event Center, Elkhart, Indiana. We'll see you there, heroes. This ad was created by Nim on behalf of Madness Entertainment Group and Hall of Heroes Comic-Con.
Hello, Internet, and welcome back to Let's Have One Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, joined as always by Jose Fuentes.
Hello, everybody. Boy, I was hoping you could say my name faster.
And David
Rios. Any longer.
Hello.
And Ron Fortier.
Howdy, y'all.
Yes.
We're going to have to get a statue
in my head a little bit.
Jose. That way we can put the statue up in front of the screen during the intro, you know?
This could be my next banner.
They have the full cardboard standee. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Well, welcome back. And tonight we're going to be talking about developing your comic art style. So if you're working in comics, any part of the illustrative side of the partnership, will that be penciling, inking, coloring, you're going to end up developing your own unique style, as does any artist, writer, visual artist, or otherwise. And we're going to be talking about the time frame involved with that, the timeline. And I'm sure that a lot of kids coming fresh out of art school, or if you're working on this at home during like your classes or whatever, you're still a student, you might be trying to find the hacks to be the next Jim Lee as quick as possible. Well, to kind of level set, it's not going to happen. Everything takes time, but perhaps you may be able to handle things in a way that is more efficient than if you were to go about it otherwise, or ways that you might be able to bridge gaps or plateaus quicker than if you were to do it uninformed. And so you might get into the tips and tricks of experienced professionals on how to overcome those gaps and plateaus, which will segue me into my first talking point to grab Jose and David's opinions on this. One of the first hacks to develop any sort of art style efficiently is to have some sort of mentor.
Have some sort of
or
mentor.
take some sort of
Hold on, speak slower, Tim. I'm taking notes.
Training that. Yes. But Jose, of course, you went to the Hubert School.
Yeah. While you guys are on this, I wanted to throw this in and see what you think, because I think it just follows along with what Tim's saying, but from another approach. Do you guys, Jose and David, I mean, when you're looking at artwork, and you as well, Tim, you've seen other people come into this business, rookies and whatever. When you look at a newbie's first work, projects or whatever, all right, isn't it like maybe 80–90% of their work totally influenced by the artists of the day that they admire and respect the most? And so basically, as they're coming into their, drawing and projects, whatever, they'll have a tendency, whether it's consciousness or unconscious, to mimic the style of that artist that they admire and respect the most. Yes or no?
Yes. Absolutely yes. I can guarantee you, anybody who's trying to get into artwork, be it a middle schooler, high schooler, adult, college student, and they want to get into comic book art, they're want to get into it because they're seeing other people's work. They're seeing Jim Lee, Todd Knock, Mark Silvestri's work. You know what I mean? And when you want to draw it out, when you want to practice on your own without any learning fundamentals, you're going to hear that a lot tonight. By the way, chat and people on the internet, fundamentals. Well, almost everybody starts off drawing their favorite artist, pulling up images that they've done, and then emulate it. You know what I mean? Like copying it, not tracing. You know what I mean? But
no,
right.
I've
done it. You know what I mean? I know other artists have done it, and one of the mistakes that I think people make is, and do that. Like I've told friends, listen, if you're just getting into it, find an artist that you really like, you really, are fans of their work, and draw what they drew, and then figure out why they drew it that way. Like, why is the shoulder spun that way? Why is the body twisted? And to start kind of deconstructing it in your brain as you're drawing it from that image. Never claim it as your own.
Right.
Claim it as your own. Disclaimer above everything else, never claim someone else's art as your own. But if you're doing something exactly the way somebody else did it and you want to put it in your portfolio for people to see, put the little after Mark Silvestri, after Jim Lee, after, you know what I mean?
Right.
That lets them know that that's the picture that you used as your reference for what you are physically drawing right there in your face.
Yeah.
But deconstruct it. The only reason I ever copied anybody growing up and whatnot is because I wanted to know how they did it. Like, why did they draw that arm that way? What muscles are they drawing? And let's be honest, in the 90s, more muscles were created than were actually on the body, in the human body.
We invented so many muscles.
The age of image. Here we go. So I got to ask. I was just plain curiosity. I mean, were there one or two artists yourself that you were a huge fanboy of and influenced your early art?
Yep. Like, you want to know? Like, mine was Todd Knock, Joe Madura. Not so much Jim Lee. I just thought it was very, very a lot. But yeah, Todd Knock, Joe Mad, and I liked Afua as I got older. Afua Richardson. Like, I love her digital work because almost everything she does is digital. I mean, she could work traditionally, but just what she does in Illustrator is magic to me.
Yeah, I think
so.
And something that will also probably, you'll, as people embrace on their artist journey, is they'll understand the difference between mimicking and copying to influences and inspirations. Where as they're starting out, we make the joke a lot about you guys are starting out, you're just drawing Goku in class a lot while the teacher isn't looking. But as I was saying, Nick, you're doing this in a way that you're subconsciously doing a study, which it's called a study for a reason. You are breaking something down. And so as you get to a point where you start realizing like, oh, I just really like the way that they draw their eyes, and so what can I pick from that? Or like, I really like the way this artist does their, you know, their hands. How can I pick that? And as an artist, you'll like how other people do their hands, but never how you draw your own hands. But you'll find this understanding of how can I still learn from professionals even as I'm already, you know, grown to a certain point, already gone through my fundamentals. And that's just something that keeps on going. Is I'll still read books and try to break out like, how did they handle the pacing in this dialogue, or how did they like handle this witticism in and how they wrote. And that's just something that is, I think, true across any creative medium, is always being a student of other working influences and peers as you continue on.
I mean, everybody's style grows. You know what I mean? From where you originally start, and it's not just training. Training helps a lot, I'll be honest. But training for you could be as easy as the how to draw books at like friggin' Michael's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they have a lot of those. And I probably have picked up a good portion of them. You know what I mean? That for stuff that how to draw fantasy characters, how to draw mythical characters, how to draw cars, how to draw Star Wars characters. You know what I mean? Like growing up over time, I picked up a lot of those.
Yes. And so when I say like one of the best ways to efficiently develop is to get some sort of mentor. Like your mentor could be knowledge compounded into a written platform, just something that tells you to, you know, work on this fundamental next, or to work on this thing next, and you're not just constantly sketching things off Pinterest. My mentor, and I still to this day call her my mentor, is Afua Richardson. I reached out to her, which I never do. I never reach out to anybody about anything, right? And I legit asked, how do you ink the way you do in Illustrator? Because I've tried it and it's not working. I don't understand. Like, you don't need to like do it, obviously not do it for me, but can you get me started? And not to date myself, because I believe I said this before, but she did over AOL Instant Messenger. She screenshotted her settings. She screenshotted like her what she did. You know what I mean? As she made a curved line, not screenshot that. She sent me so many screenshots, and then like wrote on them and walked me through it. Like first thing I ever inked on, because now digitally I ink in Clip Studio, right? But the first program I ever inked on was Illustrator because of her. You know, and then when I was in art school and I needed help with perspective, something I understood perspective, 2-point perspective, all that, but some things just didn't click for me. I didn't understand, right, how to set up a room. So I asked her at New York City Comic Con. She took like 45 minutes helping me out when she could have been peddling wares at her table. You know what I mean? I apologized left and right. She's like, don't worry about it. Like, no, it's all right. Like, I would much rather help you with this. I help you understand this. So mentors are helpful. You know what I mean? When it comes to business stuff, El Jefe is my mentor in regards to like the behind the scenes stuff. Like, I mean, I haven't officially gave him the application for it, but but anytime I have a question about like the business of it, the production of it, it's always him I ask. You know, like why are we doing this? Like how did you do this? How, you know what I mean? I don't ask a lot, but when I do, it's like and thankfully, and by the way, Jefe is rolling. You know, the big honcho himself. But like, if I have questions, you know what I mean? And I've had some, you know, I ask, well, how do you do this? Especially when it comes to like, because he helped me create a letter to send to conventions to ask about possibly tabling there. You know what I mean? Like, hey, would you bring me in as an artist? And I didn't know how to even navigate that, like how to set that up. And he's like, here, let me help you out. I'll send you a blueprint, and then you write, you know, fill in all your stuff in, you know, according in however you want, what you want to do, what you're available for, and whatnot. And so mentors are helpful.
It's really sad in a way that, you know, the internet and, you know, the computers have basically, you know, spread out creators, artists, and writers all over the globe. Whereas I can remember growing up as a fan, right? I mean, from the 50s to the 60s and maybe early 70s before as computers came in, a lot of young artists would head out for New York because that's where, the center of the comic world was. That's where you had to go. But they would also look for pros who had their own studios and basically see if they could sign on as apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't unusual. I mean, this goes back to the newspaper days. When artists started getting popular and successful, the more they worked, obviously, the more money they made and whatever, and they would bring in young artists. And this goes back to the days of classical painting, Leonardo da Vinci and the rest of them. You always had proteges working in your studios,
Yep.
and they would learn from you and your style. Well, the comic book business was the same way. If you were working in New York at Marvel, DC, and all the other comic companies in New York at this time, and were lucky enough to get a professional to hire you to work in the studio, ultimately you would get, obviously, you would get training beyond belief, one-on-one from a pro every single day, to the point where if they thought you were good enough, the pro would do just the primary work of a sketch on a panel or a page of the main heroes or whatever, and you would end up doing the background work on those panels, okay? And gradually work your way up to the point where they would recommend you to their editors to get assignments. And it was such a phenomenal, informal way, and it's what we're talking about as mentors or people to teach you like that, all right? Obviously, because New York isn't, what it was now, because the internet's made it possible to draw and create around the world, there is a way for young artists to make that happen locally. And my thoughts and suggestions, and I know groups around the country, hey, look, wherever you live, go to your local comic shop, find other creators, and start creating informal drawing sessions where you all come together and work together, all right? Make these little informal, like I said, groups, clubs, or whatever, all right? Just to keep inspiring yourself and working together. And trust me, as, the four of us know, creating in the end is a very lonely business, all right? But when you can share that process with other people on a regular basis, it opens up a whole new world of potential for your art.
Yeah, I'd say, and also one of the nice things too about that digital landscape is that, if you handle it respectfully and you're, being kind of courteous in your communications, you're also very able to, if you live across the country, you could message Jose on Instagram and be like, hey, can I pick your brain on something real quick? Or if you see someone, you're like, hey, I see you're coming to this convention, I'm going to be there. Do you mind if I buy you coffee and just ask you questions for 10 minutes? Something like that. And, don't be a creep. Don't be weird about it. But
listen, I tell people at conventions, because I don't like talking about myself, but I love talking about the process that how I do my work, right? And I hold no secrets. It's not no magical pencil that I'm using for anything. I'm not that good anyway, so it's okay. Mm-hmm. But when people are looking at my stuff, they're like, "Oh, this is cool. How do you do that? How do you do that?" Listen, I can tell you this and how I do this. This is what I do. This is how I did it. They want to be an artist. They want to do this. That's awesome. Keep in touch with me on social media. A, it's a great way for them to get them to follow you on social media, right? And B, I tell them I always answer back. If you message me and ask me a question, I always answer back. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm all for sharing whatever information I have that if it's beneficial to you, awesome.
Yeah.
We need to help each other.
Exactly. And also to kind of, as an interesting continuation of Ron's point, that's how the mangaka system in Japan still works is you'll have the primary artist or mangaka behind a comic series, and they'll hire on assistants to help with them. But essentially, those assistants are more or less, the inkers or the detail artists or whatever. And so they'll do the main work or whatever, and then they'll hey, do this explosion here, or hey, ink this in, or hey, throw in this side character. And then they'll give the notes back on it as they get it done, and then continues on. And then eventually those assistants become their own creators down the road. And so I think, holding on to that same thing where everyone, I think maybe this is a fault of the West, but everyone's very eager to just do their own thing and get say I don't need I don't need to listen to you. I am my own big britches. I'm just going to make my own book. But, you know, people have been in the industry before you and they have experience, and a lot of people just want to pass on that experience, that wisdom to keep the art form going.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think absolutely make use of that.
Right. The thing is, sometimes you look at young artists coming into the business, and you'll see some early independent comic works they've done or whatever, and you'll start, you'll recognize the style. You'll say, okay, this person, is basically following a Gil Kane approach, or this person's like, Steve Ditko or whatever. And you watch them over the years, and your hope and prayer is that strong influence will help them. Will help them, as Jose was saying, to learn, to understand the approach of their heroes, all right? But ultimately begin to develop in and of themselves their own creative approach, their own way to face, a composition or a body figure or whatever, right? And that's the hope, that they don't stay locked in to this one style, which is somebody else's style. And I've seen that happen a couple of times. Whereas what I enjoy seeing is, I can remember years ago, 20, 25 years ago, I knew this young artist who was so John Burns addicted. And everything he drew, no matter what, you could see John Burns in every one of his panels, every one of his pages. And ultimately, over the years, he kept maturing and getting better and better at what he was doing, so that influence, even though it was there, it became subtle, and it wasn't that obvious, because he was approaching it from, hey, I could do it like this. I don't have to do it like that. I can do it like this, to the point where he, at the cusp of developing his own style, he got hired, he got work, professional work, became one of the best, professional, artists, and still is to this day. All right. And I would challenge people to look at his work today, which is so uniquely his own, and you can recognize his style, and to say to them, can you see John Burns in there? And you'd have to really, really study how to look at it. It's there subliminally, all right? But this particular artist developed his own style from that, all right, and made it his own. So again, there's nothing wrong with, as Jose said, mimicking your heroes to learn what your craft is.
As long as you learn from it.
Right, but learn from it, study it, understand why it was done a certain way, and then start doing it your way. That's how you develop your style. And a question to you and Dave both, Jose. There's a tendency I find in graphic artists who shy. You have so many reference books, and I love that about you. But there's some guys, especially newbies, who shy away from drawing certain things. Okay? And so it's like they'll say, well, Ron, write me a script, but don't put any old cars in it, because I really suck at drawing old cars. And my thing is like, well, yeah, you might, but you're not going to get better as an artist by just drawing what you like. Isn't it the opposite? I mean, the more you force yourself to draw those things you don't like to draw, is when you're going to force that creativity and talent to mature itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I say, without sounding like, without being disrespectful in any way, shape, or form, right? Like, truly, if someone says that, write me a script, but don't put any antique cars, don't put any lowriders or any stuff like that in it, because I'm not that good at it, I feel they're not good enough. They're not ready for sequential art. And I say that in the nicest way, because you can do an entire script with not a single car in the comic whatsoever. But at some point, there's going to be a car, there's going to be a spaceship, there's going to be something.
Yep.
And if I would guess, if an editor is going to hire you, like, oh man, this guy's art is awesome, and then you get to a spot like, oh, like, we're gonna I want him to work on this Western, and he's like, I don't know how to draw horses.
Right.
Then if you don't know how to draw, and there's a lot of stuff I don't know how to draw, right? But if you're gonna learn how to draw, have your references. You don't have to have it like, you don't have to have like the exactly perfect, but every car, at least from what I mean, what the 20s until I want to say 1970s, all had a unique and distinct feature about them. Right. 57 Chevys had fins. The old was it 50? I want to say, I'm probably gonna get the dates wrong, but like the 52 Cadillac had like this cool fin that came up. Right, it had like an extra little like thing on it. It was amazing. It was a tank. But figure it out. Like learn to draw them. I had to. You know what I mean? And I'm not perfect, but I'll be darned if I don't have a reference folder on my computer with car, old lowriders, new cars. You know what I mean? Except for the Cybertruck, because that's a garbage can.
Yeah, you get a low poly render of like the first Warthog Halo. Yeah. Well, I think to kind of to that, it's the same for if you're writing, right? And this is something I got from a mentor. Is the only way you learn to do something fast or at a professional pace and well is by doing it slow and well. And the only way you learn to do it slow and well is by doing it slow and bad. So if you're saying that I can't draw this because I'm not doing it well enough or I'm not good enough at it, draw a couple crappy ones, get some feedback from someone who, you know, is a mentor or someone you can talk to online or something like that. Figure out where your focus points are. Try again, rinse, repeat.
Right?
Oh,
yeah. Dave, what are kind of some of your thoughts for how you developed your style when it comes to coloring, and what are some, you know, now great influences or mentors or moments where you unlocked something like, oh crap, why wasn't I doing this earlier?
Yeah, I honestly don't think I'm the best. I don't think I'm the best example of that. Because I'm not quick. I definitely am far from quick. Well, and everything that you know, that Jose and Ron talked about, you know, having a mentor and all that, I never had that. Other than if I would say I had a mentor, it would have to have been my mom, because my mom was artistic, and you know, I learned a lot from her. And just a very quick story was when I was a teenager, my mom and I decided that we were going to just see where things were, and we decided to each draw an apple, right? And come back from my mom's influence and growing up in the South and all that. She had an apple that looked like it was out of a Norman Rockwell painting. It was this, you know, idealistic, perfectly round apple right off the tree and whatever. And my apple looked like it was that red delicious apple that you got out of the bin in the supermarket with the distorted shape and the, you know, hard edges and all that stuff. And, you know, that was the way that I did it. We just kind of realized we all both had our different types of ways of seeing things. And mine was always looking at something, you know, more realistic, detailed, oriented, stuff like that, whereas hers was more impressionistic. So to say, for an art instance, mine was a lot of, you know, what was in life and stuff like that. But I wouldn't say that I had, when I started doing stuff with, you know, with drawing and then later inking, where I said, all right, well, I need to, you know, I'm going to have this person, or this person really influenced me and all that. I was more influenced by stuff. I like to draw Transformers or Star Wars or something based off the items. And you can go back and say, oh, well, Star Wars, you got Ralph McQuarrie and all that stuff. But again, it was more the, you know, the real life stuff. When it came to doing inking and that, I would have to say maybe I have a little more influence looking at, you know, some of the Jim Lee, Scott Williams stuff, because when I did the line art, I tried to do things a little light, a little clearer, not so, sharp lines, stuff like that. So I would say there was a little bit of influence on that, but um, it it wasn't so much that it was just doing that, whatever felt right, and was working with the penciler, and what the penciler did to kind of clean things up, make things sharper and stuff like that. As far as coloring goes, I would have to say when I started, I was really raw. One of the first things I did was look at, ironically, the topic of a conversation earlier was the um, Sam Keith, the Max, and kind of duplicated some of the stuff on that just to learn the program itself. And once I actually got into Marvel, I have to say that there was one guy that I remember. He was part of, he's our team captain for our night shift. His name was Sal Mancha. And the extent was when I would I'd turn stuff in, he's like, okay, well, maybe take it a little bit more or whatever. So he kind of helped me in the initial startup, but then pretty much I was kind of on my own on there. So I developed that, and also it didn't hurt that, a lot of the coloring stuff that we had color guides and things. So you had other colors that were, laying the groundwork for the pages and stuff like that. But it wasn't too long until I started tweaking a lot of those things and putting my, I do a heavy thing where I brush in shadows and I hard cut in highlights. That way I kind of mix it up on that. And that's something that just ended up being more of the way that I did it and the way that I developed it and all that. But I would have to agree with what Jose and Ron are saying is if you have somebody and you've got somebody that can, mentor you and help you in it, that's invaluable. It's something that I didn't have a lot of, and it was extreme. I had an extremely difficult time getting in and going through that because I didn't have that ability.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess now the next we'll have on that is something we kind of alluded to, and to really kind of put a focus on it is the idea of repetition with intention, which, how do you get really good at drawing perspective? Drop perspective a lot, and then you have someone tell you, well, no, this line is wrong. So it makes sense. Yeah. It's one thing to have, like, when you're doing study in a classroom, right, where you get a study or a project or an assignment and you do it, you turn it in for your grade, and then your instructor says, well, focus on this point next and try it again. But I guess for Jose and David, yours will probably be even more so in your line than given what you just told us. If you are, working on your own development, working on your own stuff right now, and maybe you're not in a classroom setting, something like that, how do you go about setting your own focus points to work on for repetition? Or what do you say, like, how do you analyze your own work to say, I want to fix this next time?
I rough it out without perspective. Does that make sense? Like,
sure.
I have an idea of what I want something to look like. So if I want a character in the front, and I want perspective in the back, I know roughly where I want to position the character, right? And even if the character's going off panel, I kind of rough it in, you know what I mean, off panel. But if I know where I want my character is, then I have to roughly guess where my next character is if he's behind, right? Because they're not going to be the same. They're going to, vary. From that point, that gives me 2 points of reference, right, for where I want my perspective to be, not to go into the whole thing about perspective, but then that become my 2 points, and that you can set up wherever you want, right? I mean, that's wherever you want your perspective. You know, your vanishing points don't have to be exactly even where everything's in the middle. You can offset it. You can take it way off panel, you know, but your perspective is going to be where your main figure is and then where that next figure is. And that sets you up on your grid where each person can go and where they are in perspective to that figure. Does that make sense? Like without going into like full drawn out detail.
Yeah. Well, not even just on perspective, but like if you're working on a project or working on a sketch card or just doing a practice and you do your first rough, you do your first thing like that and you say like, well, no, I don't like this. I'm going to go back. And how do you, when we're still developing, how do you go about setting your own focus points to go about and fix and correct and then re-attack? How do you self-diagnose your own work?
You have people look at it. I mean, in order to be able to truly self-diagnose, either do the research yourself, read books about it, read anything you can find, even if you go online and read, like there's lots of like, Professor Google has lots of options to be able to read through to learn more about perspective. I prefer to talk to someone about it because if I can see it, physically, but with my own 2 eyes, it makes a lot more sense. But I've got books. Like, take your reference books, buy your reference book. You're never going to be so good you're not going to have reference. I guarantee, I mean, without 100% accuracy, but I can pretty much guarantee Jim Lee has his own reference books. You know what I mean? Every artist can pull not just the how to draw Marvel way. You know what I mean? Not how to digitally, digital ink the DC way. You know what I mean? Or DC's digital coloring. It's not just those. It's this book on perspective, this little pamphlet book on perspective. You know what I mean? You're not going to learn. It's not going to make sense until you learn and it makes sense. You don't understand math until someone teaches you math or you read about it. You're not going to, someone has to have figured out for you to be able to learn it and then figure out a way that works best for you. Now, when I was in art school, we had a funny like Q&A with Andy Kubert, and he brought up this picture, like this double page spread. I think it was like Wolverine on a bus, and like all the blackout parts were the outside of the bus. So everything that was lit up was like in the panel, was in the windows of the bus looking in, right? And he mentions like this is in true Andy perspective. Like if you try and rule this out in perspective grid, it's not going to make any sense. Like there is nothing that's going to make sense. Like but it works when you look at it. Your eye makes sense, right? Your eye makes sense. The depth. Your eye makes sense. The perspective that it's going for. On the other side of that, Arthur Adams did a online Q&A with us. And if you've ever seen Arthur Adams' work or his process, that dude is all about the perspective grid. Like look at his roughs and look at his beginning pencils for anything, any cover he's done. It's all the way through, right? And then all the way through. He draws them all out. Now, mentioning before about learning and developing your own style, I take from both of those, right? Not everything's going to be exactly perfect within grid. If something is going to bend, you want to be able to just do it that is roughly in that grid. But if you look at any paneling that I do, like my roughs for those, I'm all the perspective grid all the way through so that I know where to grid out my figures in that panel. Even if I'm, taking it like this and turning it this way, turning it that way, where you're looking up the nose, down the nose, you know what I mean? To simplify the phrase, and there's other words, whether worm's eye, bird's eye. Yeah. I'm sure that's what other people say, but up the nose was funnier to me, and that's why it's stuck in my head.
Sure.
So, you take what you learn. You take what, I said earlier about taking art when you first start doing, you're drawing from the people that you're fans of, right? You're drawing from the artist that you love to see, the books you're picking up, anything. That's the start. And then once you develop, like, oh, how did they do this? How did they draw this hand? Like, what did I'm drawing it on my own. Wait, this hand doesn't look right. Let me flip through my comic books to see how did other artists draw the hand the way I want it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
How did they take it? Oh, they, you can barely see the thumb or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You can do it yourself. Like, I've taken pictures of myself holding my own firearms. You know what I mean? Just so I can have pictures of myself holding my own firearms. You know what I mean? So, or even my daughter, like, hey, Gabs, stand this way, and I'm gonna take a picture of you real quick. You know what I mean? I've heard artists say the best reference you have is yourself or the people around you, and that's
totally. I mean, I mentioned this in the past before, of having taken a trip up to Canada to meet Gene Day when he was working for Marvel. And Gene had this great old house up in Gananoque, Canada, by a lake. And his younger brother, Dan, worked with him. Dan was an artist as well, right? So he welcomes us into his studio, and I'm looking around his drawing table and everything else. And what do I see but, like, this old fedora, a leather jacket? He'd gotten an assignment to do some Indiana Jones comics, right? But here's the other thing I see. Across the table and pinned up on this bulletin board are all these Polaroid shots of his brother. Because Gene would read the script, he'd do, like rough sketches in the panels, and then he would shoot Dan in the jacket and fedora in the poses that he wanted to bring to life, to finish up in the panels, all right? And so he was using his brother in live shots, photographic shots, to get that clarity of the figures, the hands, like you're saying, holding the whip, doing all this stuff, using all these props, all right, to bring it all to life as perfectly as he could. So, yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of gimmicks and toys that artists can use to realize, what they see in their mind, their creativity. And then using people, Alex Ross, after he became famous and started putting out books, that would highlight his process. I mean, I think half the population of the town that he grew up in ended up in his books. He was using real people as references to all his characters, So, yeah, why not?
I thought it was great. I have Frank Cho's Ballpoint Beauties book, right? Where he goes into detail about how he does his hatching, cross-hatching, other cross-hatching to create depth and shadows on, his beautiful, lovely naked ladies, right? Page 1 says, start with your hatch lines. Then go on to your cross-hatch lines to create more depth. It's my MacBook. And then create your other, it gets even better.
Outstanding.
I got more. I'll show you guys later. But it goes, and then bring in your cross hatching, and then bring in your other hatch lines to deepen the depth. Right. Page 2, start with your cross hatch, and then bring in your cross hatch, and then bring in your other cross. Every page of that book, it's all the words is the exact same thing as the page before it, because the process isn't hard, it's repetitious. And you get better through repetition. You get better by doing it over and over again. I still have issues drawing feet. My friend Simone could draw feet amazingly, and her lines were super simple. And I still look at like some pictures of her stuff that I have, and I still use your picture, Simone, in case you're watching, just so you know. But yeah, like I was like, how do you do that? How do you draw feet the toes make sense, the pads make sense. Like, I don't understand. She's like, I don't know, I just draw them. I'm like, that's awesome. But yeah, repetition. Like, you know what I mean? These are keywords, guys. Keywords,
Yeah. Okay. David, since you said that so much of your coloring was self-taught or developed by yourself over your career, how did you go about understanding your own self-diagnosis of looking at your previous work and figuring out, okay, I want to focus on, this way of blending next, or I want to focus on this. How did you go about building out your idea of looking at your work and saying, like, I don't like how I do this, I want to fix that?
Well, I did a lot of purging, where it's like, I would go through and I'd render something and then I'd go, that just doesn't work right. So I set a lot of that up, set a lot of areas and colors that I could reselect an area quicker than having to go and retrace it and do all that, because that's a definite time killer for me.
Right.
So I would start by doing, originally I was doing a lot of stuff where I would just put backgrounds in and do all the gradients and everything right off the bat, and then, and then start layering the picture on them. But that made things, difficult to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up completely, doing like most people do, which is flatting everything, getting different values, so that I could select those on a bottom layer and all that. Then it was easier to just say, all right, I'm going to go ahead and kill that. But I also started to learn when I was dealing with different colors on how to make those colors work with the other colors. So, for example, when I'm doing stuff like blues or grays, things like that, it's no problem. You can make things in that typical, like cylinder shape with continuous grading across. If you kind of just think of, all right, I'm going to make a can, like a soda can, right? And just a regular cylinder, and I'm going to shade it and just go from dark on one side to light on the other, and you have a continuous gradient that goes through, which works great for, like I said, blues and grays and purples, darker colors. But it does not work for colors that are more at their extreme. So yellows, for example, that has 100% yellow, and a fairly low amount of reds and blues you can put in there, because you don't want to put any blacks in there.
Right.
And the same thing with reds. You have to approach those differently. In order to get that same can of pure red, you have to leave the majority of it as a solid red. And think about it, if you're looking at Spider-Man, for example, you can see a lot of things where the red on Spider-Man's suit can seem really washed out, and faded, muddied, and all this stuff, because using that same thing of light continuous to dark, is you lose a lot of that. So by concentrating, maybe what I'll do is I'll do a lot of sharper transition on the highlights and a little more white, but narrow strips, where it's got a narrow strip here, a wide area of red, and then a dark area. It portrays that color. And what I found a lot with yellows, for example, is very similar. Is if you sit there, you can easily start to turn the yellows into like a bright orange or a greenish hue if you mix too much blue, or if you put black in there, it's going to go through and just mud up like crazy.
Yep.
So I had to go ahead and start doing that and looking at that. A lot of times I will go through and I'll have an idea when I do my page, and I'll say, all right, I've got a page of the figure and just a basic background. Figure it's just flat, a flat panel, maybe some speed lines around the outside of the character to give it some, depth. I will go through and I'll say, all right, well, I have to sit there and tend to, whatever the character models establish colors or consistency, put those in. But a lot of times I'll go through and I'll put in a background, or I'll put in, some other piece, and I will go through and have to just completely change it by the time I'm done. I may have an orange background that ends up as a teal background just because it doesn't work in that situation. And I'm having to look at, how does this panel relate to this panel, relate to that panel, and differentiate. Because if all of them have orange backgrounds, then, there's no separation and all that. So I end up having to do that. And sometimes it does get a little tricky, because at some point I do run into those cases where I'm now maybe I'm taking a background that was originally blue and now has to go into a yellow. And now that rendering that I did with shadows and dark is not working, and trying to just go and play with hue and saturation to change it isn't going to do the job. So, that's a lot of the stuff that I learned by going through it, and trying to get things lined up a little bit more earlier on than later on, and having to, touch it and do all this work to do it.
So it sounds like it's like a lot of gardening, where you're doing something, looking at, not liking it, cutting it back, experimenting, trying something else, experimenting again,
Right.
cutting it back.
Yeah.
Hey, I gotta bring this up. You guys get a kick out of it. But last year, I pulled David in on a project that I wanted to do for Ben Dunn and Anti-Press, and we had Del Barris on the team as the penciler. And so in whipping up that first issue, I had this thought in my head that we were going to take a Golden Age character, and the first 5 pages of the script would be for, like a mock old 1940s comic book. And then with page 6 or whatever, we transfer to today with some kid holding that comic book in a barbershop. All right. Write the script, send it out to the guys. Well, had to tell Del, okay, I need you to draw as simplistically as you can. This is a 1940s comic book. I don't want anything sophisticated or whatever, right? And Del accepted the challenge. The kicker was, though, David was going to get that same exact challenge, i.e. color those 5 pages at the start like a 1940s comic book would look like. What was the coloring like in those days as compared to when we get to page 6, and then David shifts gears and gives us all the beautiful stuff he's doing today. So your thoughts on that, Dave? I mean, I know you researched those first 5 pages a lot before you started.
Oh yeah, I went through and I started pulling color palettes for the printing presses, because everything back then was typically versions, either it was 0% a color, it was 25, 50, or 100. It wasn't really even 75. It was those ranges. And I created a color palette based off of those settings, and made sure that nothing on those pages fell outside of that range. I only use those particular ones. So you got, if you think about those crazy, panels where you have bright yellow backgrounds, or you have army men that are green, like a really saturated green and all that. So I went through and I used that, and I looked at a lot of them. But you also had, I had to try and take into account also that out of those color palettes, I had to go through and eliminate a lot of the higher range of them, because that would, even back then, that would oversaturate the page. So I really limited it down, and it became a lot of challenge on, where things hit, and to make them so things didn't fall off, and all this. So it definitely was a challenge, and it was fun to do those first pages.
Play, because those 5 pages I think are awesome. All right, and hopefully we'll get to see this thing in print someday, so people will get a kick out of opening the comic, and then you get that little shock of, okay, what's this? Did I buy this? Is this what I'm supposed to be reading? Till you get to like that page 6, and just what you just read, that entire scene of this hero and his sidekick is in the hands of this grubby little kid sitting in a barbershop, and he's thinking, man, this comic book is cool, all right? And it turns out to be the barber's son, who came back from World War II and eventually left home. Those are all the comics he had, in his cell or whatever, and the barber put them up in his office for his kid customers to read while they were waiting to get a haircut. And that was the theme of the flavor we get, because ultimately our new modern version of this old character is going to show up in what we're doing. So, there you go.
Well, I'm also, just one last comment. You can tell that Dave works digitally, whereas I'm used to working in the physical medium, because Dave, when running into yellow, his thing was to experiment and try again different approaches. When I'm painting in yellow, my response was to just toss the color out of my collection. If you ever painted yellow, it is the worst. Yeah. Okay, but speaking of comics,
layer at first, you had to like do a like it was a layer of white or gray and then something else, and then hope to all things in heaven that the yellow will actually come through like it's supposed to.
Yeah, well, I can't remember the name of the exact technique, but I only ever started really using yellow once I redid my entire shading process to a French technique where you do your shades all on the bottom layer, and then you do matte layers on top of that. And so that way your shades will carry through and transmute that. And now the yellow doesn't look like booty because there's gradient. Anyway, but speaking of comics that are cool, Ron, I believe you have a little preview for us.
Yeah, hey, definitely. This is a big day for me, because a new series that I'm going to hopefully have premiering from Silverline by next few months, maybe, when Roland sets up the schedule. Issue number 1 of Chivalry Incorporated. All the coloring on this issue was completed today. Colorist Mickey Clausen did a yeoman's job. I think he colored the last 15, 16 pages in like 3 days, and did a really fantastic job. There's a few little panels he's tweaking, but hopefully by the end of the week, this will be off to letterer Mike Belcher. And what you have in front of you is a mock cover that Mike put together months ago, as we were talking about coming up with a logo for the character. And her name is Valerie Chevalier. It's French. All right. Chevalier translates to the horseman. And ultimately, she's going to open up a private investigation agency. She's going to be a PI, former cop turned PI. And the knight, the chess knight symbol, is the logo on her office door, Chivalry Incorporated. And hey, I'm so excited that, again, the coloring process is done. Javier Lugo's our artist. I mean, he totally knocked it out of the ballpark. I mean, it looked absolutely fantastic. The art was great. Now it's even better with the coloring, and we all know what Mike Belcher can do with letters. So I'm really excited about Chivalry 1, and I wanted to give all our viewers a little sneak peek of what's coming down the line from Silverline Comics. There you go. Thanks, Tim.
Mike Belcher got the pages, and now 37 minutes later, he's going to have it all lettered.
Most likely.
Mike is a workhorse, yeah.
Oh, man, he's a machine. Are you kidding? Oh, yeah.
Well, speaking
all right, now I'm gonna get a message from Mike telling, dude, do not commit me to 37 minutes.
Well, speaking of speed challenges, next week we'll be talking about a concept called the 4-panel comic. It's going to be how a 4-panel comic can level up your skills. Which, if you are familiar with writing flash fiction, you can often use that as a writing experiment of how do you tell a full story in 1,000 words or less. there's a similar concept in comic creation called the 4-panel comic, which is how do you tell a 4 story in 4 panels or less. And so it's a skill. It's a test for both writers and artists to, and right now it's currently being demonstrated masterfully on things like Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit. So we'll be talking about the benefits of testing yourself to being
4
as succinct as
panels
possible.
or less.
Yes.
Well, hey, no offense, all right. I don't want to throw wet rag on all this, but I read Pickles every day.
Yeah.
And I love it. Okay. It's
Yes.
his story.
Yeah.
Boom, boom,
But there's
right.
something to be said, like the Sunday Funnies were like a masterclass in like
Okay.
succinct storytelling. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Prince Valley, Flash Gordon,
Yeah.
Tarzan in the Sundays. All right, that's what you had. You had
Yeah.
a chapter, and like a serial. You had four panels, and then you had to come back next week to see the next 4 panels.
Mhm.
I tell you, who was a genius at doing this, and I forget who he worked with as an artist, but okay, now I'm going to draw a blank. The writer of The Watchmen, Alan
Yeah.
Moore. Okay. Right. Okay. When he did, what was the story that he did for a weekly comic in England? And again, The Masked Avenger. They made a movie of it. Oh, what the heck was that movie called? I'm just drawing a blank. See what happens? It gets me an
was
old
that
file.
Yeah.
What's
that?
that?
V for was that
V.
V for
V for
yeah.
Vendetta. Okay. That series ran in a weekly comic, and he had 8 pages per week. That's
I
all
did
he
not know
had.
that.
Yeah.
8 pages to get you in, to pick up where you left off, to tell part of the plot, and to leave you with another cliffhanger. The man's a genius. Okay,
Well, that's-
one of those writers I admire so greatly. All right, so yeah, you can tell a story in that bit of time.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to next week's discussion, big time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be a good time. Okay. Well, make sure to check out Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday on their respective days. We'll be back next week. But until that time,
Hey,
Make mine.
Make mine
Silverline.
Hey heroes, cosplayers, and pop culture fans, are you ready to assemble for the ultimate geek weekend? The Hall of Heroes Comic-Con is invading Elkhart, Indiana with 2 explosive days of comics, stars, and non-stop fun. Join us Saturday, May 30th and Sunday, May 31st, 2026 at the Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart. Doors open at 10 a.m. both days. VIP early entry at 9:30 a.m. on Saturday. We're rolling out a massive lineup of legends. Meet Eric Estrada from Chips and Fallout, Dirk Benedict from the A-Team and Battlestar Galactica, Tara Reid from American Pie and Sharknado, Catherine Cavadini, voice of Blossom from the Powerpuff Girls, Kel Mitchell from All That, Kevin and Kel and Mystery Men, horror icon Tony Moran, the original Michael Myers in Halloween, and more. Plus, top comic artists including Arthur Sidem, Marvel Zombies and Deadpool, John Kramer from Batman and Wonder Woman, Keith Pollard, a legendary Marvel artist on Spider-Man and Thor, and more. Scott Rosama, Stuart Sager, and others. Get autographs, photo ops, and chats with the stars and creators who shaped your favorites. The floor is packed with over 150 vendors, artists, and cosplayers offering exclusive comics, collectibles, original art, and merch. Enjoy cosplay contests for kids and adults with great prizes, live Q&A panels, artist showcases, interactive zones, and family-friendly fun all weekend. And the excitement goes live. Madness Entertainment Group is broadcasting straight from the con floor all weekend on YouTube, Build, and Rumble. Catch every moment as it happens, then relive it anytime with the full shows available later on Med TV on Roku. Grab your tickets today at hohcomiccon.org. Hall of Heroes Comic-Con, May 30th and 31st, 2026. Northern Indiana Event Center, Elkhart, Indiana. We'll see you there, heroes. This ad was created by Nim on behalf of Madness Entertainment Group and Hall of Heroes Comic-Con.
Hi, I'm John Beatty. Make mine Silverline.